See what's going on here. Just doing some testing. One second. What's going on, people? Man, I'm just in here enjoying this Memorial Day. Hope everybody's doing good. See if I can wait till some people get up in here. iSound Info, what's going on? How you doing? Sly, what's up? That's good. That's good. Man, just trying to relax on this Memorial Day, man. One of the few days off that I actually have. My company does not honor a whole lot of the national holidays, man. So I'm just trying to make time with what I got, you know. Hold on, let me see here. Man, so I was watching I'm still looking at a lot of the fallout from the whole situation with Joe Biden and his interview with Charlamagne the God the other day. And, I just wanted to kind of like take everything in and see what everybody was thinking. Look at Kenny over here. Who's this nigga supposed to be? That 503-305, that's Kenny, y'all. I'm not going to let him troll me the way that I troll them when they on here. Yes, I was trying to just look at some of the fallout from that, and just to see where like people are falling on it, to see where obviously we know where the blue check blacks where they're going to fall on it, but I'm more interested in seeing like where the average everyday black person falls on it. And to be honest, man, it's been kind of a mixed bag. I'm a little more disappointed because a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing, and I'm talking about having personal conversations with people that I know offline, not really the online community and whatnot. That's, it is what it is. But in my own personal circles, talking with family and friends and things like that, coworkers, black ones in particular, it's kind of like split down the line. I would even say, as a matter of fact, they probably favor this whole thing where, iSound Info, he said, from the Sunday shows, it seems like the fallout is minimal. You kind of do get that impression. You do kind of get that impression. That's why I wanted to talk to people off the internet and kind of see where everybody else is falling. It's a lot of other things going on in the country right now. We're still in this mode of trying to deal with the COVID-19 situation, and they're starting to open up parts of the country back and things like that. So everybody's kind of wrapping their heads around a few different things at once. So it may have flew over a couple people's radar, who knows? But from what I was seeing, man, it seemed like a lot of people that I talked to kind of like fall along the lines, yeah, they do take advantage of the black vote, but are we going to vote for Trump? That's always the caveat or the comeback. It always comes down to fear of what happens if we decide to stay home and we get Trump elected. So they seem to take this burden upon themselves to defend the country against the tyranny of Trump and all this type of stuff. And it's just like, man, you can't put that kind of pressure on yourself as a demographic. I was doing a little reading, um, and there's this, let me see if I can find it. There is this concept that they call a captured electorate, right? And basically, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing what it means, is basically when you're a captured electorate, you pin yourself so deeply in an ideological position that you find yourselves trapped within the confines of the one major political party that best represents that position, or at least gives lip service to representing your interests, right? So they would say, for example, conservative evangelicals are a captured electorate for the Republican Party, because if the Republicans don't do what they want them to do, where are they going to go? And so they made that same application to the black folks in America, the African Americans. They say we're a captured demographic, and we have nowhere else to go. If we decide to not vote for the Democrats, we're going to let the Republicans get in office, and they're not going to represent our interests at all. And okay, let's say that's the case. I think Democrats know fully well that we're a captured demographic, and their behavior has certainly over the last few years shown that they believe that, right? Not even over the last few years. What the hell am I talking about? Over the last 40, 50 years, since before I was alive, they've shown that they have very little. As a matter of fact, I would say they almost have contempt for Black people who go out and aggressively make demands of that party, to cater to some of our interests. And it's really interesting, man. I was reading this article. Let me see if I could put it up real quick, from the 538 or whatever the hell it's called, Nate Silver's. 538. That's Nate Silver's political blog or statistical blog, or whatever the hell you want to call it. That perspective is odd. What has America done for Black Americans that require such loyalty? Everything they have would have been the right thing to do under any circumstances. That's what it is, man. Hold on, guys. I'm gonna try to put this article up here. Just bear with me for a second while I try to share my screen. I ain't gonna be on here too long. I just kind of wanted to test this out too. I'm not gonna lie. I miss out on a lot of lives and whatnot, so I just kind of wanted to test this out as well. Here it is. This is an article by the 538. I'm not even going to read the whole article. This came out 4 years ago, and he was talking about basically how Black voters are so loyal that their issues get ignored. And I'm going to skip down to something that really, well, first, let's go over this. The captured group theory was put forward by Princeton political scientist Paul Freimer in a book that first published in 1999, Uneasy Alliances, Race and Party Competition in America. He argued that politicians focus their attention on white swing voters, and that the two-party system is structured to push aside the concerns of Black voters because they consistently and overwhelmingly favor one party. We generally think all voters have influence, but just as voters in battleground states are more heavily courted during a presidential election, modern politicians have focused their efforts on moderate, disaffected whites in the middle, whether you call them soccer moms or NASCAR dads. Bill Clinton, for an example, was a master at signaling that he prioritized white voter concerns, pointing to Clinton's sister soldier moment, criticizing a Black rapper and activist. I don't know if you guys remember that. I was in high school when that happened. But that's a whole nother a whole nother topic for another day. But it just kind of goes to show the condescension that these people have and the contempt that they have for us a lot of times. So as we know, more than 90% of the black vote has gone to the Democratic candidate for president for the last umpteen years. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. There was a part in this article where they started talking about the more black support that a piece of legislation has, the less likely it is to pass. Let me see if I can find that real quick. 50 years. Here it is. More generally, a 2015 report called Political Powerlessness by Nicholas Stephanopoulos at the University of Chicago Law found that black support for congressional legislation actually decreased its chances of passage. As he writes, as white support increases from 0 to 100%, the likelihood of adoption increases from about 10% to 60%. As black support rises from 0 to 100%, though, the odds of enactment fall from roughly 40% to roughly 30%. Now, this is just from 5 years ago. And so I guess what they're trying to imply here is that this is part of the reason why Democrats say a lot of things to black voters, but in reality, they don't do a whole lot, because I guess in their minds, they feel that even if something does have a tremendous amount of support from the black community, it's actually more likely to make other groups, this is amazing, it's more likely to make other groups oppose said legislative action than support it. And I found that interesting. Now, that also kind of conflicts with something that I was reading a couple months ago when the whole reparations debate was really heated. And I remember reading specifically something about how white support for reparations jumped from I think it was 20% all the way up to 40%. Don't quote me on that because I could be wrong. But I know that the support for reparations had increased pretty dramatically compared to where it was, 15, 20 years ago. So I don't know what to believe in regard to that, man. It seems like on one hand, I take that back. I can believe what I see, and what I see kind of reflects what this article was saying, that, support decreases as we get on board with certain things. And so that could be why a lot of times these Democratic politicians back off of us once they get the vote. But, something I was thinking about earlier is anybody ever notice how closely tied black support and the black relationship with the Democratic Party is, how closely analogous it is to relationship dynamics? You know what I'm saying? Like a woman has a boyfriend and she's begging him for attention, begging him to spend time with her, begging him to treat her right. And he just kind of poo-poos what she's saying. She's always whining and crying. But then at the same time, she's already giving up the goods to the dude anytime he wants to. And he goes over there whenever he feels like it, maybe brings her a little something to eat, and then goes on over there and claps them cheeks whenever he wants to, with little to no pushback about it at all, And, it's kind of analogous to our relationship with the Democratic Party. Well, their relationship with the Democratic Party. I don't have a relationship with the Democratic Party anymore, nor do I have a relationship with the Republican Party. I have a relationship with black folks, and our interests are first and foremost of priority to me. But let me see what he's talking about. What it is, Mario, glad to see another shark at the helm. What's going on? The standout without handouts. Gold link. Yeah, what's going on? That's why we start jumping on minority issues instead of black issues, because that's supposedly the only way things will get passed. Yeah, absolutely. And what's funny? Before I get into that whole girlfriend analogy, I do find that happens even at the lower levels. As you guys know, I don't know. I talk about this on and off every once in a while about, the personal work that I've done in my community. And I can honestly say that I've seen a lot of the same things. We've had a lot of fights. And what I find the most important, most interesting is we fight a lot of Black people over certain language. Like when we want things to be specifically for Black kids, we get a lot of pushback from Black people. A lot of those Black bougie types, a lot of those Black people that were involved in fraternities and shit like that. I've noticed that a lot of them will push back hard when we try to do things specifically for Black youth. And it never made any sense to me. But I find that when you get into these situations where you're pushing for certain things for your people, they have a way of making you compromise it to the point where when it gets comfortable with white folks, it barely resembles the original thing that you were trying to push for in the first place. I guess they call that the Hegelian dialectic or whatnot. When you want to get someone to position C, you start off with two positions and then you try to push them to the middle so that they can get to the synthesis that you want them to get to. I'm probably butchering the hell out of it, but I hope you guys get the gist of it, man. But I have noticed that in real life politics and stuff like that at the ground level, you do see situations where if it's a lot of Black folks that support something, man, they will fight tooth and nail to get that thing to not happen, So I just thought that was real interesting, man. Let me see. Booty call. Yeah, they look at Black folks as a booty call. They look at the Black vote as a political booty call. And what's crazy is we see it coming each and every time. We've been having these conversations for the longest time now. Now, thankfully, with the advent of Twitter and social media, these are some of the good things about social media, is a lot of people are getting fed up with that, and we're voicing that, and we're rallying people behind that. And here's the thing about the Democratic Party. All these Negroes, they can run and vote for the Democrats as much as they want to. They can jump and do whatever the Democrats tell them to do. But here's the thing. The Democratic Party has put themselves in a position where they need historic Black voter turnout in order to even have a chance to win presidential elections. Local elections, not so much. But definitely in terms of presidential elections, they've put themselves in a corner where they need 96 to 97% of the Black vote to have a prayer of winning a general election. That's just what it is, because Hispanics don't vote in terms of that type of party loyalty. Hispanics don't vote like that. Asians don't vote like that. Other groups don't vote like that for one particular party. They don't have that kind of party loyalty. In fact, I think I read something where something like 30-something% of Hispanic males voted for Donald Trump in the last election, right? So what happens when you don't have that kind of loyalty and you're willing to shop around a little bit? Those people pay attention. They actually compete to try and get your vote. And then you see their interests get represented at the highest levels, right? For whatever reason, Black folks, we don't take that into consideration in our politics. Our politics is very emotion based. You got to do this because our ancestors died for this right and this type of thing. Well, I would say that is very true. Our ancestors did die for our rights and all of that. Voting was one aspect of it, but what they didn't die for was for us to be held hostage to a group of people that don't have our best interest at heart. You see what I'm saying? There's a big difference between, honoring someone who honored you versus showing just undying loyalty to someone who doesn't have that same feeling back at you. You know what I'm saying? The feeling is definitely not mutual. So I don't think that our ancestors died for us to basically enter into another form of indentured servitude to the Democratic Party. I just don't see it that way, but a lot of people, you'll be surprised, man, if some of you talk to your family members about these elections, and if some of you that are, a little more politically savvy or not married to the Democratic Party, and you bring up certain things, some of you guys are leftists and whatnot, and I kind of lean more on that side of things. You'll find that when you talk to your family that are, diehard liberals are married to that Democratic Party, that's one of the main lines that they'll give you. You know, our ancestors died for our right to vote, man. And so I think a mistake that we make is thinking that it's just the black bougie class that thinks that way. A lot of the times it's everyday common working class black folks that have that exact same sentiment, man. And some of them are the most fiercely loyal, you know. So if the left is going to do anything, they're going to have to come up with an agenda that speaks to the needs of working class black people, right? That fully encompasses what happened to us in our history in this country, and then what would be the way going forward. It has to be a reasonable alternative to what we're seeing now. And for those of us who are not afraid of Trump, who are not afraid to let the Democratic Party fail until it gets to a place where it's willing to sit down at the table with us and listen to our demands, I'm going to say this. It doesn't take many of us to make that happen, right? Like I said, they need historic black turnout in order to win elections. They need historic turnout, period, to win elections, but especially they need historic black turnout to have a chance to win elections. And the second coming of Barack Obama is not happening. And hell, I'm under the impression, man, really, even if Barack somehow did come out and run today with everything that a lot of us know now, it wouldn't happen. You know what I'm saying? It would not happen. At least not as dramatically as it did when he first ran. It ain't gonna be a sweep. He blew out McCain, blew out Mitt Romney. That ain't happening in this day and age because too many people are too tired of everything that's going on. And a lot of younger people who are able to come up, and they're going to be 18 in another month. And then they're going to be definitely 18 by the time this next election rolls around. And if you get them to vote, you're going to have to explain to these young people why should they support a particular party, because they're not going to just sit here and say, oh, because our ancestors did that, we got to do this. You know what I'm saying? You have to explain to them why it would make sense for us to vote for this particular political party. And so for those that are out there working with youth, such as myself, I include myself in this, you have to explain to them what the alternatives are. Explain to them sometimes you have to take a loss in order to in order to achieve long-term goals. You have to be willing to take short-term losses, right? A lot of people that are old, my age and up, they don't really understand that principle, man. Like sometimes in life, you're just going to have to let certain things happen in order to get progress in the direction you want it to go. It's plain and simple, you know, and I go back to the analogy of the jump off. If the jump off don't stand up for herself, she's just going to continue to be a jump off, you know, until she tells the dude, no, I'm not pulling the panties off no more until you do X, Y, and Z. Then either he's going to go on as he's going to show his true colors and he's going to go on his merry way, or he's going to come correct and the jump off is going to get what the jump off wants. It's that simple, man. But either way, when you put yourself in a position where you're so scared of what's going to happen with if the other party remains in power, that you just blindly run out and support people who openly show you contempt. Joe Biden has openly displayed contempt for the black community for a long time, man. This is not a secret. You know, even when he was Barack's running mate, you know, he said some slick stuff. Barack is a clean boy, or what did he say? Barack is clean or something like that. And all this type of shit, man. This dude is something else. You could tell the mindset of where he comes from. You know what I'm saying? Let me look at some of these comments. Let me see. This year's DNC convention in Milwaukee with a decimated black population. Do you think we'll be better off focusing on state level politics? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the state level politics is really where it's at. And if you really look at the conservatives, this is where I'll give them credit. Conservatives have been building up their politics at a state and local level for many years now, you know, doing things, you know, gerrymandering and all that kind of shit. That aside, if you look at the conservative playbook, they really do understand the importance of gaining power locally and then pushing up to the national level through local politics. So if you go and you look at even some liberal states, let's take or perceived liberal states, a lot of them have either majority Republican legislatures, or they at least have a parity of a legislature where you don't have, like in California, Democrats dominate our legislative branch out here in California, right? But when you look at other states all across the country, it's not that way, and so that has a lot to do with what laws get passed, where funds are diverted to, you know. There's a reason, for example, why a lot of black majority cities don't have the financial resources that they need in order to be successful. You know what I'm saying? You look at a town like Flint, Michigan, um, with the water situation there. That's in a state that has a pretty good majority of Republicans in charge over there at the state level, right? And so when the funds and everything get dispensed, who's in charge of that? You see what I'm saying? So I would absolutely say politics at the at the local level is very important. It's more important to me than even politics at the national level. Now, that's not to say that national level politics isn't important. Obviously it is, right? Because you have Supreme Courts coming up, all, with a lot of those judges in there that are getting up there in age. So that's always something that you want to keep in mind. Now, however, if you're someone like me, um, although I do lean left, right, I do have some stances that probably would be more favored by the right. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, I'm a strong believer in the Second Amendment as far as I'm an advocate of Black self-defense. I think Black folks should be the number one purchasers of firearms in this country just for our own self-protection, right? I think that we need to be out there buying guns legally, taking classes, learning how to shoot, starting neighborhood watches, learning first aid, learning all those different things so that we can be more effective in our communities. And then learning how to, because when you partake in those activities, right, a lot of these Black gun groups that are out there, one thing that they instill is a sense of community. All right. And so when you have that sense of community and you extend it outward, man, it's a powerful thing, because these people are not just training with firearms. They're training to learn first aid. They're learning how to garden. They're learning all types of things about diet and all these things that we really desperately need in our community. Another thing that we desperately need in our community, and speaking of which, I just saw a story posted on Instagram talking about this young brother. I think he was just due to graduate from high school, and his friends, they challenged him to a bet. They put up, I think it was a couple $100 that told him if he jumps in the water and tries to swim somewhere, they pay his car note or something like that. And this young brother can't swim, but he went on ahead and jumped in that ravine and took the bet, and he ended up drowning and dying. And so one of the things that we got to remember too is that in Black communities, there aren't a lot of community centers anymore where people can learn how to swim, right? When I was a kid, we had the Jackie Robinson Center, and there was an Olympic-sized swimming pool at that facility, and we all went down there and learned how to swim. But due to budget constraints and things like that, in a lot of different cities, those programs get taken away, right? They don't have the personnel anymore to really teach these things. So those are some of the things that are important at the local level, that people can get involved in to try and make a difference at their community, in their own personal community. And then, like I said, you build it from the bottom up and then reach up to the top where you get to national level politics. You'll have a strong base, to stand on. Let's see. Clean and articulate, well spoken. Yeah, he was saying stuff like that about Barack Obama. For Democrats to win moving forward, their constituents have to continuously turn out in record numbers, and that is simply not sustainable. No, it's not sustainable. It's absolutely not sustainable. And I think here's what I don't understand. They have to be crunching the numbers and realizing that this stuff is not sustainable, right? But when you look at the Democratic Party, or at least when you look at the DNC, you really don't see them enacting any type of long-term strategy. It really seems like they're just kind of going off the seat of their pants and just, worrying about tomorrow when it comes, and let's do what we can today. It doesn't really seem like they have any type of long-term strategy for their base, for their electorate at all. And I keep saying that I'm shocked by it. I need to stop being so shocked by it, but because they continuously prove that they really have no long-term strategy. I think the people who lean more left maybe have a long-term strategy because they realize that it's a lot of work to do in this country with everything that keeps happening when Bernie Sanders tries to run. But I think the right, they do a damn good job of thinking long-term, and that you can't really say the same for the Democratic Party. Mario, what is the end game to that? If every community exercises the Second Amendment, what do you think the future would look like? Well, that's just a piece of the puzzle. And I think I kind of elaborated on that a little bit. That's just that the Second Amendment thing is just a small piece of a greater puzzle towards building a community, building a bond within the community. You know what I'm saying? That's why I mentioned everything that comes along with that, because it's not just guns. When you look at a lot of these Black Second Amendment groups or a lot of these Black self-defense groups, it's not just guns. They, like I said, they do a lot of stuff with first aid training, learning how to swim, learning how to garden, survival training, and things like that. So now I'm not saying every Black person needs to be Rambo and go and acquire as much guns and ammunition as they possibly can and get ready for World War III. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that when gun legislation comes up to pass, I think that Black people should be heavily invested into looking into what this legislation entails, and then deciding whether or not it's something that we want to support based on what's in it for us. You see what I'm saying? Out here in the state of California, we have very strict gun control laws. And so someone like me who's an ex-felon, it's very hard for me. It was very hard for me to get my rights back. I had to go through a whole lot in order to get my rights back to become a responsible citizen and a gun owner again. And a lot of other people don't have that opportunity. You know what I'm saying? But I took that very seriously, and I'm very active in my community. And so that's all I'm saying, man. I'm not saying that the Second Amendment is the end game. I'm just saying that that's something that we need to take into consideration in the whole piece of it, if that makes any sense. Let's see. The barriers. Our nation's brightest minds don't get into politics as much as they once had. Many people are making change that even outpaces legislation, i.e. Uber versus taxis and so forth. Politics is like second string. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I think because that's because a lot of people are somewhat fatalistic about politics. Because that is one aspect that is one thing that can happen if you start looking at these things. Sorry, y'all, my phone is going off. I'm trying to stop that. That's something that can happen is you become jaded and become almost fatalistic about politics to the point where you don't want to get involved at all. You see what I'm saying? And I think, unfortunately, there is that aspect to it where a lot of Black folks are just like, you know what? Ain't neither one of these parties have anything in it for either of us. They never will. They hate us. So I'm going to just check out from that altogether, and that's a dangerous way to go, because rather you participate in politics is going to participate with your ass. You know what I'm saying? That's never going to change. You cannot participate all you want to, man, but laws are still going to get passed. New legislation is always still going to be proposed. So I'd rather get actively involved in that, and fight it where I can, as opposed to just kind of saying, oh, well, fuck it, and just kicking back and watching it happen, and then trying to act like I'm a helpless passenger when the car starts to go off the track, you know what I'm saying? Or when the train starts to go off the track, Demoralized, absolutely. What do you mean, Manu 1-2? You said guns as self-preservation gateway drug. What do you mean by that? It's lost a lot of prestige, and if you can make a grip in another sector, you just pay them off like Bloomberg. Yeah, it's a lot of money in politics, and the sad part about it, man, is the way politics works in America. You definitely need money. You definitely need money, and that's why I advocate people getting together and forming PACs or whatever you can, and pulling your money together, and pulling your resources together, and going out and making things happen at a local level. I agree. It's absolutely vital. It just isn't sexy. Yeah. Hey, man. What can you do? That's why I say that um, we need to really seriously think about the way that we deliver a political education in this country to the younger people, right? The younger generation that's coming up. The way that we made STEM sexy, right? You can do the same thing and make politics sexy. All right. The neoliberal age has left a lot of people feeling powerless and translating political issues into personal ones. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of individualism that comes to play in it as well. It goes back to our conversation we had with the Real Black a couple of months ago, where I made the point that I was talking about how we've lost this sense of a collective Black identity. And we've kind of gotten into this thing of, okay, I'm gonna just go for mine, or whatever my secondary identity is, I'm gonna go for that, whether we're talking about your sexuality or who you want to date interracially or whatever the case may be. A lot of people have gotten away from that collective Black agenda and gotten into, chasing after whatever their personal happiness is. So when you have some Black folks who do get involved in politics, a lot of times, and I'm not talking about just running for office. I'm talking about people who, get involved in campaigns. They donate money. They use their social media platforms and things like that. A lot of times they're pushing everything but a Black agenda, man. And I mean, I hate to keep coming back to that, but you look at the Black Lives Matter, that group, and what they did once they got that money from the Ford Foundation. What was it, $100 million they got from the Ford Foundation or something like that? None of that gone into the community. That all, for all intents and purposes, you could consider Black Lives Matter an LGBT organization. You know, is that we are not a monolith instead of collective politics? Yeah, that is a part of that. Now, we are not a monolith, right? And I want people to understand that we're not a monolith, but at the same time, because we're not a monolith, we have to work on the things that we do have in common. And that's going to be the tricky part, to get people to come back to that. We don't really have anything at play in terms of whether you're talking about media that brings us all to the table together at 7 o'clock in the evening to sit down and have a collective experience anymore. You know what I'm saying? We don't have Martin, Living Single, any of these other Black shows that really push sort of a shared collective Black experience anymore. We have like Blackish, which pushes a Black experience that's outside of what most normal everyday Black folks really know. It's Blackness for white people. T talks about that shit better than I ever could, but you catch my drift. But anyway, y'all, I just wanted to hop on here and ramble a little bit. I got to get out of here. My phone getting blown up right now because I got something that I need to do. But man, it was good to hop on here and just try this out a little bit and chat it up with y'all, man. Thank you for joining me and listen to me ramble on a little bit. And gun training, considering what you have to protect, literally focusing a lot of benefits to learning any new. Okay, I got you. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It has to be, you have to apply that focus, man, for sure. It's a fragmentation caused by internet mostly. Yeah, the internet, man, you can go play in your own little personal sandbox, man. You can really curate your experience on the internet. You don't ever have to deal with any type of collective action or thought process, man. So, but anyway, all right, y'all.